Today we're going to be presenting our project on the need for gun safety reform. I'm Paris.
I'm Maria.
I'm Cameron.
I'm Felix.
Hi, I'm Chris.
Here's our agenda page, and let's just look over the things that we're going to be speaking about today. Okay, for our problem statement, we have that since the shootings in Uvalde in May 2022 and El Paso in August 2019, little to no change has been implemented to prevent future incidents of gun violence at the state level. These shootings have not only taken an emotional toll, but they also have a psychological toll on the Latinx community in Texas, since it causes many to live in fear of the unpredictability of gun violence. These lack of strict gun reform laws have directly influenced the rise of gun violence in Latinx community, and if let them change, future incidents will undoubtedly arise. Research has shown that voters support gun safety reforms on both sides of the spectrum, and a possible solution that has the most support from both sides deals with making sure that people with mental health issues are prevented from owning a firearm.
So going on to the background, just to kind of start off where we initially started our research was just trying to figure out the impact. So the group Every Town for Gun Safety analyzed statistics from the CDC and found that each year over 4,100 Latinos die from gun violence in the United States. That's about an average of 11 per day. And while 13,300 Latinos are shot and wounded annually, Latino children and teens are 3 times more likely to be killed by gun homicide than their white peers. And so when we hear these statistics, we see that there's like a very clear need for gun safety reform, or at least for some action, considering the deep impact it has on the Latinx community. And going on beyond that, we see like studies show that there is wide support for it. And so you see on this chart that there are like various recommendations or various legislative actions that could be taken. And here we have that preventing people with mental illnesses from purchasing a gun has wide support, and it has wide bipartisan support. So this Pew Research study shows that 87% of Americans support preventing people with mental health issues to access firearms. And you see that it crosses, the political spectrum of both right and left. And, this is coming after a time where Texas and Latinos are especially tired of seeing these shootings. So, in response to the Santa Fe shooting, which happened in 2018, and left 10 people killed, Abbott signed legislation to try and improve mental health access. And then beyond that, you have the El Paso Walmart shooting that occurred in 2019. And this was actually the deadliest attacks on Latinos in modern history, which left 23 people killed and 25 injured. And this attack was especially harrowing just because this was a specific attack on the Latinx community. The shooter had a clear intent to harm that community. And most recently, you have the Uvalde school shooting, which in May 2022 left 21 people killed and 17 injured. And so, Greg Abbott has faced some backlash over the comments he made, and he's promised, $105.5 million to try and improve mental health services, but it actually makes no mention of like specifically mental health, like background checks, and which is something that we're going to be focusing on.
So here we have included some firsthand comments by people who were affected by the violence. One person said that I feel like I don't have a choice but to have to be on my toes and alert, and it's exhausting. Another one said we were singled out, and it's a particularly desolating feeling. We're grieving and we're feeling afraid. And another one said it feels scary. I don't feel like I'm comfortable anymore with the color of my skin. And these remarks were made after the El Paso shooting, in which the Latino community was directly targeted.
So here are some of our possible solutions. The first of them is raising the age requirement from 18 to 21 to promote the acquisition of guns to individuals that are older and more developed. And we've seen states that have already implemented the policy that saw a reduction in gun violence, alongside a lot of mental health evaluations where we're meant to improve via teachers and counselors in schools, which would advocate for better incomes or better outcomes, having files on individuals before purchasing guns, promoting the standard of awareness, mental health support for students. But the only issue is that teachers and counselors would be overworked.
Another solution is evaluation check, a mental health evaluation background checks when you go to purchase a firearm. That's one thing that is not part of the purchasing process of a firearm. When you go to purchase a firearm, they do background checks, but they do not check your mental health. Mass shootings are caused by mental health breaks, and we see that in the El Paso and Uvalde shootings. There seems to be a way that these people are slipping through the cracks and causing harm to the Latin community. An issue that may come about this is the scarcity of social workers and what qualifies as dangerous behavior. Another solution is a required safety class. The state of Texas does have a concealed carry class. There's also a constitutional carry state, but you also should be required to learn how to use a firearm and what it takes to handle one and know the dangers of having one on you and using one. Florida passed a bill similar to this. The issue again comes into play of people not taking it seriously, and they go and they take it, they get it done, and here we are. And the unconstitutional limited research for improvement. Here are some of our recommendations.
Some of the recommendations we have for mental health evaluation. Although mental health checks for gun owners do exist currently, they are not as rigorous or implemented as widely as they should be. If comprehensive mental health evaluations were enforced before obtaining a gun, it would ensure adequate ownership when purchasing and possessing a gun license to all of those who decide to own a firearm. New policies need to be designed to ensure the proper enforcement of mental health evaluations as part of the background check process prior to purchasing a firearm. So these new policies would be the ultimate result of our recommendation by a commission of mental health experts to the Texas legislature. These recommendations would be the foundation of the mental health evaluations performed by trained professionals required by the state before allowed to purchase firearms. Being that the current mental health background checks simply look for those who have been deemed mentally incapable by a court or committee to a mental institution, this change will allow for the elimination of loopholes by ensuring all purchasers have an up-to-date mental health evaluation. As mass shootings are caused by mental breaks / poor mental health directly indicates the need for change. The lack of gun reform has ultimately led to the continuous gun violence. Therefore, changes must be quickly implemented to help prevent future acts of violence within the Latinx community.
So moving on, kind of moving away from like the recommendations specifically and what we talked about, this kind of letter to the editor just kind of talks about specifically like how tired the Latinx community is by the lack of response. So in this letter, I mentioned, the Uvalde shooting, the Santa Fe shooting, the El Paso shooting, and we've constantly seen and heard from our, the people in charge, from Greg Abbott, from the Texas legislator, that, they're trying, that their thoughts and prayers are with them, but like we've seen consistently that there's been a lack of action actually taking place. And most specifically, we talk about, in this presentation, we've talked about how mental health plays a huge part in this, and that like that is the big problem, is that there's these cracks in the system of mental health screenings before purchasing a gun that just simply are not being enforced. And even now that Greg Abbott has been reelected, we need to demand action from him. We need to demand action from the Texas legislator, and that's essentially what this letter kind of goes into. And yeah.
Okay, so for our Arte es Vida project, we decided to make an ofrenda, which has pictures of all the victims from the El Paso and Uvalde shooting, just to remember them and honor their lives. Our art is reflective of a society that allows gun violence to prevail. Lawmakers have failed the people that they have sworn to protect and has led to major loss of innocent lives. Our artwork also reflects the dire need for change towards a future that ensures the safety of Latinx communities because, as we stated earlier, these acts are sure to reoccur if change isn't made. And when observing the artwork, we expect the viewer to place themselves in the communities affected, look at the impact these tragedies have had, realize how nothing has been done to generate change, and they should feel the anger and channel it into action. Latinx communities are valuable and they deserve to be recognized not only when tragedy occurs.
So just to kind of summarize our main points and arguments on this issue. Following the El Paso and Uvalde shootings, gun safety has become a prominent issue, directly impacting Latinx communities within Texas. As inaction to these events has begun to run rampant, it seems as a new tragedy occurs, we're doomed to repeat the same cycle unless lawmakers enact real change. After each tragedy, lawmakers were quick to send their thoughts and prayers, but have not passed actual comprehensive gun safety reform. And this leads to one of the main reasons of gun violence within the state of Texas, which is that guns are way too accessible. Therefore, the Texas legislature must address this issue by creating and passing policies that will enforce stricter mental health evaluations as part of the background check process before allowing people to purchase a firearm. And like we stated before, the new policies will result from recommendations by a commission of mental health experts to the Texas legislature and will be the foundation of the mental health evaluations performed by trained professionals that Texas will require before purchasing a firearm. And then here we have our all right.
Yeah, so then beyond that, we just have our bibliography, and thank you so much for listening to our presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.